All right. I think we're rolling. Oh no, I've got feedback on my microphone. I know why though, don't worry.
Happens all the time.
Happens every time I do this. Okay, is that better?
Yes.
Perfect. Yes. It's multiple tabs. So, and we're off to a good start. So, Sahana, Nick, hey. Welcome to the Land Grid something. I don't know if this is a webinar or a podcast or a blog or if it even matters these days.
We call it the Talking Grid.
The Talking Grid. I like it because that's exactly what I'm looking at. I've got 3 parcels here. One is owned by me, one's owned by Nick, and one is owned by Sahana. So there we go. So, gang, obviously we're all working from home with the team. It's a really weird time in the world going on right now. And, you know, I guess that we want to flex our muscles of just getting together and kind of rapping about stuff that people who are interested in our work might find interesting. But we don't have a load of like very specific content today. So let's just rap about some stuff going on at work. I'd like to hear about what you guys are actually doing to fill the days right now. Like what you're finding that you can do for fun to like get outside safely and socially distanced, like what that all looks like. And I don't know, let's just wrap. Nick, what you got going on at work right now? What's the main flavor of the day?
The flavor of the day. So I think like the 2 categories of stuff that I'm working on mostly is like the old standby with customers, like making sure people have what they need stuff.
Everybody's always happy all the time, right? Very few people have any questions or ask us for anything.
Yeah. Right exactly now. Right.
As you're diving into this, just because I don't know if you're a customer of ours or you are curious about us, so you know we really pride ourselves on providing great customer service and support, and that includes chat channels that we have on the site, phone and email. And so Nick is one of the fine people that you'll often interact with if you're using the software and you're trying to figure out how something works, or you're trying to accomplish something with your job, not the software, just like what are you actually trying to use the software and the data to accomplish. Oftentimes you'll encounter Nick. So Nick, you deal with questions sometimes from how do I reset my password to like, how do I repurpose these 37 buildings in this neighborhood and kind of everything in between, I guess.
Yeah, totally. It's interesting how many people will use the chat function to just be like, I want to buy this parcel, or like what's happening with this random land across the country.
We could indicate a new line of the business we should open up. The answer right now is like we don't own anything.
Because it's really like, and then you start to dig into the stories and it's just wild. Like somebody's mom owned the property and lost it through foreclosure. Like their mom's neighbor's barber has like a shack on a lot and they want to, there's like so many random things that happen. So, but yeah, so all roads lead to me, I think is like the takeaway. But yeah, so a lot of figuring out like what people need and making sure that we support them. We've been doing some cool stuff over with Milwaukee LISC. We have an embedded public map going on where we have coronavirus resources. That's probably the most topical thing we're doing.
Sure.
Right.
And so that's a good like use case for where they've got a website, they want to drop in an embed link and they can link to one of our public maps that we can update. So that's like a good specific case. We got some stuff rumbling around. COVID related research data wise. I also am the guy who does the Mapping Monday stuff, which is not a spoiler to anyone who has heard me talk because it's exactly like that in the posts. So that's like been some interesting stuff too, just to play around with some of that data that's coming out because there's so much of it and people are so interested.
And there's there's a request on LinkedIn, Nick. Somebody asked if we could normalize our Mapping Mondays for COVID by population.
Yes. Yeah, we can. That could be
live customer support. There was a question on Twitter too about where the Cuyahoga code level data.
Yeah, we gave.
So the short answer is Cuyahoga County Board of Health are released by zip code, so it's not something that's like broadly applicable elsewhere, I think.
Okay, and he got the link to the. I think there was a follow-up for like...
Yeah, there was like an article in the local paper.
Got the link.
Got it. Cool.
Yeah, we aim to please. But yeah, we do like a Mapping Wednesdays update with a normalized by population.
Mapping Monday, Mapping Tuesdays, Mapping Wednesdays.
Exactly. Every day is a mapping day.
And sorry. Go ahead,
No, I said the LinkedIn guy will also get the normalized population next Monday.
Okay. Because this is an interesting question for us, and that might be on some people's minds if they're using data for research. Is like, what can Loveland and the land grid data do to be helpful in understanding anything about this situation? And it's sort of an interesting tension for us, I think, because we do have this big nationwide data set, and it can totally be useful for certain kinds of research, but it's not always essential for the kinds of research that might help in mapping where people are, or like the capacities of hospitals. But the project that does jump to my mind of somebody who reached out to us who wanted the data, what were they doing? They were looking at, they have access to some address level infection data where people live who have been confirmed to have coronavirus. And then we're doing research that had far more inputs than just our data, but they were looking at characteristics of the property and the housing type of where people who contracted the virus live. So because when you mix that together with other kinds of data, you might find patterns about dwelling situations or densities or things of that nature, duplexes, that could actually give insight to where things may be more or less likely to happen.
Yeah. So what's interesting is like, and I mean, like I do and do not want to get down the rabbit hole on this one, but it's interesting. So like with the zip code level stuff that I was looking at in Cuyahoga County, it's interesting because density does not correlate as you would expect to the number of cases, right? So obviously there's so many unknown variables in like the way the data is collected and testing is limited and all this, but it's interesting to me because my first take on that was actually like, it's not so much density or housing type like we'd expect. It actually seems more related to me. It seems more wealth related, which is plausible, right? Because like you think about people who are like a managerial class, like white collar workers, maybe they travel more for work. They spend more time in airports. They travel more broadly on their vacations, right? They're
more likely to contract than somebody with lower.
Like this is my very, very like, don't hold me to this theory, but yeah. So I'm thinking like
just a disclaimer so that everybody here feels safe about that. Like no statements made here are like.
I'm not a doctor.
But
yeah, but like I think that's interesting because I don't know how the heck you would actually map this, but like the interesting is like if that's the way the virology like enters the metro areas through like the modes of transportation, let's say mostly airports, right? And then like diffuses, like you'll see a different pattern. Like right now, maybe all of these cases are in wealthier outlying areas, but like it's possible that areas that are more at risk because they are more like areas with systemic poverty or areas where you don't have healthcare, right? Or you don't have a job or whatever, you can't afford to buy 3 weeks worth of food at a time. Like maybe it starts out in wealthier areas, but the transmission ends up being stuck for longer, right? Like the long-term effects are actually in these areas with density. So seeing it change over time will be really cool. And I imagine all this data is going to be coming out more and more fine-grained as time goes on too. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah. And if anybody listening can make use of nationwide property boundaries, building statuses, occupancy statuses, anything we have, just reach out to us and we'll sort of just fork it over. We'll ask what you're doing, and if it's at all reasonable, we'll fork it over. So.
Yeah, we did that last week with the Ohio State researchers, but yeah, that was interesting what you brought up, Nick. I think it probably started off like that with the working class traveling, but recently I've been reading about why we see this kind of rise in numbers in Michigan, especially since the response for it was fast enough and we went into lockdown quite soon, immediately after we had our first early cases. And one of the reasons, at least for the Detroit area, is because it's highly impoverished and not a lot of people have access to healthcare. Many were evicted probably very recently and are homeless. And that's kind of like, built into this whole sudden surge in numbers that we've seen in the Detroit and the Oakland County.
Well, if you think about that, with all the work that we've done, and a small plug here for a really interesting report we just put out recently that Nick and I worked on. Primarily, other people on the team worked on it, and we worked on it with partners from Detroit Action Commonwealth. But it was a look at the 2017 tax foreclosure auction in Detroit, and an investigation or a follow-up, really, of what actually happened to those 6,000 some properties over the intervening years, and some insights into how when somebody loses their home in the city, typically it's bought by somebody from outside of the city, oftentimes outside of the state. So you're kind of fragmenting local ownership, and the outcomes for the conditions and the occupancy of the buildings and even the current tax payments are not so hot. And that's on our reports page off of Landgrid.
Yeah.
And that's an issue that our team has worked on for years. It has been trying to showcase in Detroit, like, hey, look, if you want to have a stable, growing population in the city, you've got to stop seizing and selling people's properties to random people and thinking that that's going to lead to good outcomes. And one of the first major, I don't know if this was major to everybody in Michigan, but certainly in our world and in Detroit, this was major, is that the treasurer stepped up and said, I'm just going to cancel all tax foreclosures this year. And the city of Detroit, working with the state, I believe, said that they were going to turn all the water shutoffs back on. Another huge problem in the city is just, thousands and thousands of water shutoffs at occupied homes, both owners and renters who aren't responsible for paying water bills or taxes, and this stuff happens to them. And like two of the first big responses, stop the foreclosures, turn the water back on, and I believe that all evictions are halted as well. And so it's interesting for people who've worked on trying to change that for years. A situation like this kind of brings home that this is not a healthy thing to be doing to people without some amount of care in the process, right? So
not to mention that, not that we looked at that specifically in the report, right? But like the amount of equity, right, and like household wealth that's lost in those kinds of, like the whole foreclosure crisis in Detroit and in other cities, right? Like the amount that's been lost there, like those are the savings that people would be tapping in situations like this, right? So like the fact that people are, nearly tapped out coming into this crisis, right? Like that, I think you'll start to see like people are pretty close. I don't know what the stat is. It's like some very high number of Americans like couldn't scrape together more than $400 for an emergency expense. I think that's the stat. It's something like 40%.
More than half. Shoot, I should know this one too, because it's a fascinating stat. And I even went behind the scenes a little bit. I want to say, anybody can Google this thing quick, but it was like Federal Reserve did a survey, and they do it every year. They do it frequently. And I want to say it was like 60%. It's a high percent couldn't afford an unexpected $400 expense. And I even read down for criticism of that research, and the criticism of it said that it was subjective in the sense of like, what does can't afford mean? Like, if somebody came to me right now and was like, hey, Jerry, I need $500, and I was like, I can't afford that, but I could go get it. I could make that happen. But their readjustment was like that it wasn't, 40% maybe it was. It wasn't 40, it was 20. And so it's still like 1 in 5 people, and you amplify that over, more than 300 million people in the country, and you stop everybody from going to work and getting paid for weeks and months. I don't know. This is such a big thing. We can kind of stay on topic for other stuff that we do, but obviously this is the elephant in the room, right? You shut down the world's biggest economy for months, and it's still only really just started, which is the crazy part. It's like, I feel like at least where my head is at in this is like, it's all like anxiety in the background. I've already had friends and people I know get the virus, and in one case so far actually pass away from it. So it's getting closer and closer to home, even if you don't, if you and your family don't have it. And so I feel like kind of where we are psychologically right now, it's like we've all sort of like, I don't want to say made peace, but made some amount of peace that this is going to go on for a period of time. And now everybody, how long have we even been shut into our houses? I can't remember. Has it been 2 weeks yet?
3 weeks.
Yeah, I think we're about 2.5, 3.
Yeah, it's amazing how stuff becomes not normal, but just like, and I kind of feel like maybe that's the point we're at now, is it's like, okay, I know this kind of lifestyle, but we don't know anything about what the full effect is going to be.
And I feel like the other side of it too, right, is like we're well positioned as a company, just by virtue of the fact that like we were all working remotely anyway, right? Like I'm in Cleveland, the headquarters is in Detroit, like et cetera.
Right. We've got people in Philadelphia and Fresno and Ann Arbor.
Right. So like, that's one of the weird things. Yeah, it's one of the weird things that has been like
I'm in the Upper Peninsula.
It's almost like cognitive dissonance, right? Like, because on the one hand, like my day to day has not changed very much at all, right? Like I'm still same desk, same room, you know. But then like the news you receive and what you hear from other people with different jobs in different sectors, right, is just like totally abnormal. So it's this weird balancing of those things. I don't know if you guys have that same experience of like, it's weird to be doing the same tasks and seeing sort of the same demand up till this point, but then it's just like totally the world has changed.
The world has changed, and I definitely have had more of a change at home as well. For me, working from home was normal until 3 weeks ago, but then now I have a 2-year-old at home with me, and my husband working full time at home, and both of us are trying to get work done, but he's also a little kid. He's a baby. He needs a lot of attention, so we have to keep him engaged. We have to change his diapers every 2 hours and between meetings. So yeah, but I think overall it hasn't affected us at a work level, because we were always used to working from home and remotely, and we still continue to do that. We stay connected virtually, we get work done virtually. So I definitely have to say that this has been good, because that's the one thing that you can hold on to and say that's still normal, that's still going on just the way it was always meant to be. So work is again continuing, but that's it. I see all these things on social media about people doing innovative things at a time like this, but I feel like things have gotten busier, right? I don't seem to find this extra free time to do all the cool stuff that people are doing with their kids and learning new hobbies and things like that. That hasn't happened so far.
Make sure you take a break, Sahana. We've got your back. I know.
No, you guys have for sure.
It is interesting, and I don't know. I mean, I feel like I don't know what tips you would have for people, because you kind of take how your normal is for granted. But I do feel like that we have a really good remote work culture, because we do have the office in Detroit, and we'll get everyone together periodically. And Mary and I split our time between Detroit and the Upper Peninsula, which is where I'm at now. We're totally hiding out in basically Canada, like when we got a house here in Calumet, and but I think we've been used to getting stuff done and having good relationships with everybody, just with Slack and sometimes video chat and phone calls. And that's sort of like what this time calls for. So it's weird. It's like we've kind of been practicing, and but I don't want to over assume, because I also feel like it's easy to assume that like other people, isn't this what you do too? But it's not the case. I mean, you're right. I mean, I've actually been surprised that so far things have not felt that different for us. Like most of our customers and partners, I think it's probably I mean, maybe it's just obvious. It's the nature of data and software. Like when something like that, we don't really meet our customers face to face to close a deal. Typically, I mean, sometimes we will. Nick, you'll travel to Dallas or Milwaukee or wherever, and sometimes I'll fly somewhere, and Sahana, you'll go, meet with the land bank, and you'll go to Flint and you'll do all those things. But it doesn't have to happen, and it's not every day. And a lot of the people that we work with, like, I think it just so happens, like for some people, if there's a situation like this, they want to use data or they want to use software to get more efficient at whatever it is they're doing. And so for us, I mean, it's there's like maybe a slowdown of some people that we're working with, but then there's like a speed up from some other people who are like, this is more urgent now. So yeah, it's definitely keeping us busy, and it's always interesting to try to find those like balances of work life when you're not in the office. It's hard enough like when you have an office too, but it's like, and I'm insane, and I'm always, I either have my notebook out or I'm, doing the actual like digital work. So it's kind of this nonstop surreal carousel of like the work thing's always being close, but I like it. You guys holler uncle if it's getting too much.
No, it's good. Yeah, I don't know. I think we're fairly well like positioned as a company overall. I think the danger would lie in like long-term economic term, like if So the first quarter was rough economically, stock market wise, right? If the second quarter is worse still because there's more people getting sick, right? Like at some point it may become, I think, like I don't want to just, I'm reluctant to just be like, oh, everything is fine and it will continue to be fine. But also I
nothing
think
is ever fine, Nick, even in
right,
good times. So,
right, exactly. But you know, I think good as it could be is fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hear you. So what are you guys doing? How are you getting outside of the house? Because I know, you know, so I'm here with Mary. And for those who don't know Mary, Mary's also, she's my wife and she's also our co-founder and operations officer. So she and I are well practiced at working from home, you know, together. But what are you guys doing to like safely get out to like solo walk or anything like that? Like, do you have a good routine for that, or you have stuff nearby that's inviting for that, or not so much?
Yeah, so I'll walk the dog pretty much as I normally would anyway. I feel like it's a pretty good activity. I go out later now just because I'll go out typically after dark at 8 or 9 or whatever because there's fewer people around and I don't want to be a jerk to anybody else.
Sure.
But the real activity has been so my girlfriend and I bought a house in November, right? And one of the gifts of the house was that we have like a very small property and all of it is stumps. So there are a lot to dig out.
Stumps. That's good.
Yeah, stumps. So lots of them. Like we're talking about like huge, really unpleasant. So whenever I feel particularly either masochistic or have some spare time, I'll go out with like the sharp spade and just like dig huge craters to save myself the money of like having to go pay somebody and or renting a stump grinder.
That is a good quarantine and an excellent visual image that I will cherish.
Yeah, I feel like I'm like I want
just like carving out like a redwood trunk in a backyard in Cleveland.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I watched that movie 1917, the World War I movie, which by the way is again like a good escapist thing to watch.
I haven't seen that.
Yeah, it's basically like a one long shot. It's like one of those epic mission quest type things where he's got to reach somebody before a certain time or people will die. Kind of like that's the whole story. Sorry, spoiler alert. But
World War I? Oh, I don't have to see this thing now.
Yeah, you wanted to know what happened, right? So anyway, so it's like digging trenches is where I'm going with this. Like it's like wet and muddy, and I'm like sliding around, and my dog is covered in mud, and I'm covered in mud, and like anyway, it's
you just enhance the image.
Can you videotape it the next time you do it?
I totally will. Yeah, that can be actually our Wednesday post. We can do mapping Mondays and just like mud Wednesdays.
Mapping Mondays. How to map the stumps in your backyard and removal.
Yeah, exactly.
We should do a live cam feed or something for Wednesday.
That'd be hilarious. Yeah. But anyway, so what about you, Sahana?
Getting out with a kid has become definitely very difficult. So when we do grocery shopping, it's just either I or Prashant. We've started doing these. We try and go for walks every now and then, and when it's safe enough and when we feel like it's not a lot of people. And typically we choose like slightly colder days because the warm days we see a lot of people outside.
Yeah, right.
And then his school, like the daycare that we used to send Arav to, that complex is empty. There's not a single soul there. So that's a nice place to go and walk. And then we started just doing these drives, just to give the car some purpose in life and, just roll down the windows a little bit for some fresh air. And it's safe for Arav to sit in the back and enjoy a bit of time outside the house, but nothing really crazy, nothing as fun and adventurous as Jerry doing, cross-country skiing and all that stuff.
We liked it. I think a lot of people were. I'm in the Upper Peninsula in the old copper mining town called Calumet, and it's very far. You can eat from Detroit. You can either drive to New York City or you can drive to Calumet and spend the same amount of time. So it's like a 9-hour drive up over the Mackinac Bridge and way west in the UP, and it's on a little peninsula that's surrounded by Lake Superior. And this is another situation where I feel like. We had a lot of friends, some family. I think the family mostly kind of got it, but they're like, "What are you doing? Like going somewhere like that remote? It's beautiful. I see that, but isn't that like far away?" And it's not only do we love it year round, but right now it's probably particularly advantageous for this kind of a situation because there are a lot of like outdoor activities that do not have a lot of people.
Yeah.
Around. And so like right now, it's we have really long winters here. I mean, you get snow like for you'll get snow in 7 months of the year. You know what I mean? Like not for a full 7, but it'll be over 6 months, like a week in either direction. So we still have a lot of snow on the ground, even though it's melting. But so the cross country trails are still open, and the beaches have like just thawed. Like all the big ice chunks that build up and block Lake Superior have like pretty much fallen apart now. So I can go like rock picking, which is like my nerdy endeavor. That's like trying to learn my amateur geology. So I can pretty safely and directly like get to the cross country trail for as long as that lasts now, probably. Yeah. Or like get to the shore and like very easily see where people are. So like, and it's kind of like what they say about animals now, like, they're more afraid of you than you are of them. It's like that with anyone you see outdoors, which is funny and good. I'll see someone like way down on the beach and they'll see me and go like, oh crap. And they'll just so it feels pretty good. I think that's a good practice, right? I keep hearing everybody should get outside when it's like you're fully socially distanced. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I keep looking forward to your Instagram posts.
I'm sure I'm gonna, I had a kind of a nightmare thing happen with my phone recently where I don't know what did it, but my phone fell into this infinite loop of not like restarting. It was just the Apple logo over and over again. And I tried to fix it. And I ended up having to factory reset the phone, which sucked because I don't use, or now I do, but I didn't use iCloud or anything. So I like lost like a year of photos, and it kind of like put a bee in my bonnet to be like, all right, I'm going to get better at this, like taking videos and photos and stuff. So I'm probably going to make everybody sick with like all the video vignettes that I make of like stuff around here now, but we'll see.
Not sick, but envious. Well
let me see if I keep this up. Enough with the rock tumbler. All right, it's a stupid lake. I get it. It's big. Congratulations. There's a large lake near you. Yeah.
That's true. I have one question for all of you. What is the one new thing you've done since the lockdown? I saw this on Instagram and I was thinking, what is the one new thing that I have done? I think we have to do more new things before. But
so I bought like a very cheap, because it was like super rusty cast iron skillet, like a really heavy one of those thick ones. And so I am like currently in the process of like stripping and then reseasoning it, which is a super long process, and it involves like many like back and forth in the oven and stuff. So that's interesting because I'm stoked. I feel like by tomorrow I'll be able to cook stuff in it. So
did you use
laborious activities? The stump with a spoon, and the cast iron.
Yeah, glutton for punishment. And then in the meantime, I just like squint at parcels and move.
Yeah, we're all very cool people.
Yeah, it's riveting. I'm sure this whole thing is just.
We are though. That's the thing. And other cool people know that. But I'm trying to think of what I feel like lame about that, because I feel like I'm setting up new things to do, but I haven't fully like bit the bullet on it. Like I installed a green screen studio in our guest room so that I can get back to doing that. I haven't actually done it yet. And what did I start doing with? So I'm trying to learn geology now, and I've definitely been spending more time doing that, but it's not really new. There's got to be something new that I'm doing. I don't know. I'll let you know if I think of it. I'm just doing more of the same weird stuff. I don't know.
I know.
Scale.
Yeah. More of the same weird stuff. But the one thing that is maybe not entirely new, but something different that we did was, so my engineering friends and I, we have remained very close through all these years. Most of us have moved away to other parts of the world. We've, had, married and kids since and everything, but we try and stay connected on WhatsApp all the time. And we decided to do this video call, and we try and do it once a year, but this time, it was on a weekend and nobody has any other place to go to anyway, or anything else to do on a weekend. So we ended up having an 8 or a 9 hour long video conference with all of our friends, their spouses, their kids. They woke up, they napped, depending on the time zone. Some of them were having their Saturday night drink, and some of us were having our breakfast in the morning, and we literally just spent the entire day together.
That's intense. How many people was that? And that was on Zoom? Was that the Zoom thing? Or?
No, Google Duo.
Okay.
We downloaded Duo on our phones, and we were about 15 people. And some of us have kids, and some of us don't. So it was like, it was like noisy. We were constantly talking over each other, but as chaotic as it was amazing.
That's cool. That's a long one. I was going to say it's marathon, but you could literally run like 2 marathons.
That was very long.
That's, it's a lame one, but that's probably something that I've done that's at least new for me. Like, I'm not a huge fan of video chats. I feel like I should, clearly it's a thing and it's useful in some cases. I'm like a pacer, usually like when I'm on the phone, I'm like, I don't know, I'm not all there with like the nuances of it. I'm just like, let me hear the voice, and like I'll walk around and like think about stuff or whatever. But Mary's mom's birthday was just this past weekend, and so like she's got 5 brothers and sisters and extended family and stuff, and so there was just a big giant Zoom call for like 90 minutes. Yeah, everybody poured like a cocktail, like we made margaritas, and then it was like watching an already noisy family that in a healthy way tends to talk over each other, flash around the screen, and I just mostly just sat there and kind of looked at it and was like, wow, there's a lot going on. But
yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, what else? You guys want to chat about anything else related to work, or like? I mean, this was fun. Again, I don't know if this is like, we post this, if anybody just finds it interesting to hear kind of how we sound. You can check out Nick's beard is looking far more groomed than mine. I've definitely got. I'm like double trouble because first I'm in the Upper Peninsula where it can just be kind of the style, grow your beard out, raw. And then with the whole pandemic and the staying at home, I got double trouble on my beard. But
should we make it clear to people, who Jerry is and who Nick is?
Yeah, it's always good to introduce yourself at the very end of like. I'm a general manager. I'm co-founder and CEO. Nick is head of what's your current title now, Nick? You do so much with data and with helping people.
Data strategy and special projects, I think, is what
data strategy and special projects. Yes, very important person, but lovely MVP. And so we all do a lot of stuff here. If you interact with our company.
I would say the one in the blue sweater is Nick, and the one because you're both identical right now.
Right. Yeah. We have been mistaken for siblings on the streets of Columbus. Was it Columbus where we got catcalled?
It was Cincinnati. That was one of my favorite work experiences of all time.
Yeah.
A guy pulled up in a truck and just yelled like, "Are you guys brothers?"
Really?
No. I mean,
no.
It could be.
Okay.
Yeah, it could be. I don't know. Yeah. I'll take it as a compliment anyway.
Yeah, take a test. But so maybe to be continued. We'll do more of these kind of like just open chat, vlog and casts or whatever. Yeah. Whatever these
therapy sessions for each other. And,
yeah. And as we get more comfortable with it, if anybody's listening to this and finds it or interesting, talk the things you want us to talk about, because frankly, part of what makes this kind of fun to do is that we have the problem that I'm sure a lot of other companies and teams do too, but we work on so many more interesting things and have so many more interesting, just thoughts that then can be like reasonably expressed in like a newsletter or a blog post. And, obviously for our presence on the site, we want to be very like straightforward and professional, because when you sell services, you don't want to be confusing. We work really hard for as confusing as we have been in the past for all the different things that we can do, just trying to make it really straightforward. So, we try not to put too much noise in it, but then at the same time, just having conversations about the kinds of things that come up or that we work on that can go anywhere, maybe reveal more about kind of how we think and what we do is fun. And hopefully interesting to some people.
Yeah. All right. And then we may have a newsletter coming out soon, in a few days. And then a few other interesting updates for our products. We just recently launched the data store, and we have a few other updates coming up soon. We are keeping ourselves busy, churning away. The product work is going on at the same speed as it was before. So
it's an exciting time for us, which is crappy because the backdrop of everything is crappy right now. But yeah, we do have a lot going on to share.
True. The work is keeping us busy, which is good.
Yep.
All right. Anything else?
Cool. No, sounds great. We'll talk about Tiger King the next time. Sound good? We'll do.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do a whole episode of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, you watch it real quick. Honestly, I think there's like a 90% chance that you'll just fall down the rabbit hole. Be like, you want to watch the next episode? Right? Nick, what was that?
Yeah, because it's a special brand of crazy, and you just can't. It's like watching a train wreck, right? Like you can't look away from that. You can't be like, I don't think I've seen it. You're not like, oh, I'm good after episode 2. Like you just have to watch
there's many levels from like how despicable so much of the activity is to how like attractive and bizarre just like a lot of the like aesthetics and attitudes and like characters are. And then part of it too, I was thinking about this, it's as like a business study, because they are running a business. They're running a very like, unethical, you would say, I mean, the way that animals get treated and the way people treat each other, but is fascinating. Like how I think my life is complicated. I think about that team trying to take care of dozens of tigers while like dodging bill collectors, mortal enemies, like running like early internet era television shows out of like their basement, daily with 60 viewers. There's so much going on with that series that you can almost focus on any element and find it interesting. But
wow.
For another time.
I gotta watch it.
So, all right, we should have some themes at the end to play us off, but I guess I'll see you guys on Slack in like 2 minutes. Does that sound good?
For sure.
Fair to say.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.